And so we have a quorum. I'm calling this meeting back to order. All right, it's Catherine as well. So the only school committee member absent this evening will be Donna Chambers. Okay. Let's see. Gina, the floor is yours. Section 3.
So recognition, closing and sealing of executive session minutes. I recommend that minutes relating to the privacy of students and their records, approval of home instruction requests remain sealed.
So moved.
Thank you. Motion by Craig, seconded by Linda Lyle. Any discussion? I see none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That looks unanimous to me.
Okay. I recommend that minutes pertaining to collective bargaining, NEA, ESP negotiation update remain sealed until such time as an agreement has been reached.
So moved.
Thank you. Motion by Craig, seconded by Linda Lyle. Any discussion on that? I see none. Those in favor? Thank you. I count that as unanimous. Disclosure of executive session votes.
We had 3 votes in executive session. The first vote was concerning the executive session minutes of October 13th, 2020, home instruction request. There was 8 in favor, 0 opposed, 2 abstentions, 0 recusals. In favor, Callahan, Day, Grover, Giusti, Luzon, Lyall, McAllister, and Stahl. Abstaining, Abbott and Johnson. Second vote was of a home instruction request. It was 10 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, 0 recusals. In favor, Abbott, Callahan, Day, Grover, Giusti, Johnson, Luzon, Lyall, McAllister, and Stahl. The third vote was to return to regular session. It was 10 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, 0 recusals. In favor, Abbott, Callahan, Day, Grover, Giusti, Johnson, Luzon, Lyall, McAllister, and Stahl.
Thank you, sir. Recognition.
Okay, so please join me in congratulating our high school girls soccer team. They were named the Showcase Cinemas High School Team of the Week. We also want to send congratulations to our Hope Valley Preschool Special Educator, Janine Healy Mankoff, at Hope Valley Kindergarten, also teacher Trisha Abbott, and Charlestown School, grade 2, Emily Iredale, all were nominated for the Life Changer of the Year award. And also, we want to give many thanks to Richmond School Committee Representative Clay Johnson for his service to the Charahoe community.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes, sir.
someone or a group I'd like to include in recognition, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I get around Charahoe quite a bit. I was over here at the evacuation drill here last week. I hope some of the other school committee members got invited to it. But what I've noticed around here is that we are doing a super fantastic job of following the governor's guidelines. I saw well over half of the students over here and staff, and there was nobody not wearing a mask. I was at a soccer game the other night, parents, students who were there, again, doing everything right. So, you know, I think we're one of the few schools, if I'm not mistaken, that have been going brick and mortar from the get-go, and to have our students, parents, faculty to follow the rules and guidelines that the state has been laid out for us, I think is something that we should be very, very proud of. So I think it's time that people on this virtual school committee realize that everybody's doing everything they can to keep us safe.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. It's a perfect segue into public forum. So for those of you who are non-school committee members, this is the section of the evening where the public's given an opportunity to speak to the school committee on any topic that is not already posted within our public agenda. If you want to speak, go to the bottom of your screen. If you hover over the participants icon, you can click it. It'll pop up on your right-hand side, and then at the bottom there should be a raise your hand symbol. You can then activate that, and then I will call upon you. So while those of you who are considering speaking, go ahead and find that button and click it. I do want to let folks know we have some guests tonight from Troop 1 Richmond. It's a Boy Scout group. They're working on one of their Eagle merit badges, and it's about communication. And so the objective is to go to a public meeting and just observe a topic and the dialogue that goes along with that, the pros and cons and the debate that is around that. And so they'll be taking notes tonight. So if you see Troop 1 or something, that's who they are. So welcome, Scouts. Looking forward to having you here tonight. It might be a short meeting, I don't know. So for those Scouts, probably the most most discussed topic will likely be under business, letter B, which will be the school reopening update. That would be my recommendation to you, and I'll let you know when we get to that section. Okay, I don't see any hands coming up, so I'm going to close public session, public forum, sorry. This brings us to policy.
Okay, this is the political activities policy. I recommend approval of the revisions to this policy, which were tabled at the last meeting.
We have Linda. You'll move the motion? Yeah, so moved. So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by, okay, we have a motion by Linda Lyle, seconded by Ms. McAllister. This is now open for discussion. I see no discussion.
Just to clarify,
Oh, Mr. Stahl.
the motion was to approve as amended.
As it was
With the
written.
change that was presented
As it was
last time. Okay,
Correct. So as it is in the packet, that would be the approval would be to add the one line to the end of the policy.
awesome. Just wanted to make sure I was getting that right. Thank you.
You got it. I see no other discussion. Okay. Those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Those opposed to the motion? I have Bill Day. Those abstaining? Craig Luzon. Any recusals? Okay. Motion passes. Thank you all. This brings us to business.
So we have the Ride School Building Authority allocation of funds for the COVID response. I recommend you enter into an acceptance agreement with Ride School Building Authority for the allocation of funds for COVID response, which was $16,273, which our understanding is, and Ned, correct me if I'm wrong, it's based on COVID numbers by district, not necessarily the fact that we're one of the only districts full reopen and have everybody in school.
Correct.
moved.
That's my understanding, yeah.
So moved.
Got it. Motion made by Craig, seconded by Linda Lyle. This is open for discussion.
Chairman,
Mr. Day.
yes, I heard what Gina said, and maybe Ned can make me feel a little bit more comfortable. And I did a little research on this. You know, a lot of it doesn't make sense. You know, some of these school districts that have making twice as much, getting twice as much money to state than we have. They got like 4 buildings, and you know, some of this stuff is to me typical of Rhode Island politics. But maybe Ned can reassure me that there is some rhyme and reason for this. So if he has a couple of seconds, I'd appreciate a better understanding of why I should support this. Not that I'm opposed to the money. I'm just having a little problem with the formula or whatever they use to allocate some of this money. Thank you.
Yeah, we didn't receive any documentation as to what the formula was. The information that I shared with the superintendent was based upon what we received for verbal feedback at a Rhode Island school business official meeting. And that's what was explained to us, is that it was based on the amount of COVID cases that a particular district may be responding to. And the absence of a formula, I had nothing that we could push back with.
So if I may, so because we're doing a good job down here, we're passing the money upstate to other districts that are not doing a good job. This is Rhode Island. I guess I shouldn't be asking that question because it's just so, and this folks, I hope some of these people that are on here understand why we have such a problem with the state of Rhode Island dealing with the Department of Education, and realize that this school district for many years has done yeoman work with the way the state treats rural districts, especially ones that are high performing districts. So I have to put that out there because we do have a little bit of a following here.
Thanks, Bill. Further questions for Gina or Ned, and/or comments? I see none. I'm closing discussion. We have a motion and a second. Those in favor of the motion? Thank you. That's unanimous.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
All right, and Gina, if you permit me just 1 second. So Scouts, this is probably the section I recommend that you track as part of your communication requirement. Thank you. Sorry, Gina.
No problem. So the big piece of our reopening update today is really about our preparations for Q2 and Q3 for middle school and high school, and trimester 2 for elementary school. Middle school, high school, and CALA families were asked to complete the registration by last Friday. And we are now in the process of reviewing our transportation and busing routes, seats on the bus, assigned seats, to determine how we can get everybody who needs a bus. What I'm showing you now are the numbers of the new requests for either in-person who want transportation, in-person that do not need transportation, and those who would like to move to distance learning. Elementary registrations end this Friday. We are going to be close, to be honest. So what we did was we sent out letters to families who have not been frequently riding the buses, or minimally riding the buses, or not utilizing the buses at all. Carrie, Ned, and Kathy have been doing a great job speaking with those families. Some were athletes that had just not accessed the bus, and their sports are going to be ending around November 13th. So they'll be back on the bus. So we wouldn't remove those students. But what we're trying to do is make sure that we can do the route. So Lillian's been doing a great job. And our hope is that by the middle of next week, we'll have a good understanding about how many seats we have available, who gets transportation, and then if necessary, we may ask for an additional opt-out, one more round of, if you can opt out of busing, please do so. We're going to see how we do by the end of this week to see if that may be necessary, or the beginning of next week. But that's really where the Q2 and Q3, some of our families wanted to know why we were doing it for Q2 and Q3 for the middle and high school. Why not each quarter? And the reasoning behind that is our need for the winter isn't going to change in January. We have to be the same preparation that we're doing in November is what we need for January based on occupancy numbers, spacing. So the needs aren't going to change. Where the trimester for elementary school is mid-March, Q2 ends in January. So that's why we're not going to make any shifts after Q2. We recognize with Q1, there was a lot of anxiety coming into a reopening. So that's why we just did 1 quarter at a time to give everyone the opportunity to get back to school, understand the protocols and procedures, and feel as comfortable as possible in the middle of a pandemic. So any before I take down the slide, any questions?
It's not so much a question. May I, Chair?
Yes.
Comment on this portion, just because I don't want to lose it, Gina. I was making a note on that piece, changing from not allowing changes between the second and third quarter. I heard what you just said about, the school's need isn't going to change. So our process isn't going to change. The same calculations for occupancy, transportation, and everything are going to stay the same through the winter. So from the school perspective, I understood that. From the parents' perspective, their situations may change or their needs may change. So the idea here was to be flexible. So I just don't want to skip past that. I was one of the parents who thought, man, I wasn't sure about making the decision between these quarters. I might want to make the decision at the end of the next quarter, but kind of not being given that option that it's 2 quarters lumped together. That's a long time. So I understand that worked better for the district because our needs aren't changing between those quarters, but families' needs might be changing during those quarters. So I personally wasn't a fan of that, not having an opportunity to change between the quarters. I can understand that it's more complicated and more difficult. I absolutely can appreciate that. But from a parent's perspective, I wish we were offering that opportunity to change again between the quarters.
I completely understand. And what I can say too is it's really the transportation and spacing. So what we're trying to do is say to the families who do register for Q2 that we're all set. However, we do take it case by case. We're doing that every day now as we can. I mean, obviously, if a family can transport, it makes it a little bit easier. Then the principals and the teachers are looking at spacing. That's the second thing. That's where it gets tricky, because what will have to happen if we don't have the spacing, obviously, or the transportation, is then we would shift the model. So that would mean that not everybody would be able to come to school every day. Our goal is to provide a full reopening if we can, but it's going to get much more complicated with spacing and transportation. So when I say the reason was, it wasn't because of necessarily it was easier for us. It was more about the fact that we weren't going to get additional monies for more busing or more opportunities for spacing to shift for Q2. That's why we needed to know so we could plan accordingly. And we didn't want to shift plans for families and say, okay, now we're partial, now we're back to full distance learning. We're trying to be as consistent with the planning piece for families as possible. But I understand your point. And we're going to try to be as flexible as we can on a case by case basis.
Lisa Macruso.
So I appreciate Dave bringing a parent perspective to the conversation. So I want to offer an alternative parent perspective as well. So one of my daughters is going into school, and looking, as every parent can now, because you've just posted the projections for what the trimester 2 and 3 will look like, right? It looked like on that slide, I didn't take a screenshot, so I can't see it now, but it looked like in high school, we are netting, right, around 40 something kids, because let's see, 17 are moving to distance learning and 78 are coming in. Right? Okay. So, right. So the other part of that parent conversation is, as I'm making a decision for a student that is in person, knowing the space that she has, knowing, right, the protocols that are in place, knowing how everybody moves in and out of the locker rooms and the bathrooms, and everything is working, as Bill said, beautifully. My child feels very, very safe every day, and so do I. But right, I now have the opportunity to look at this data. Okay, there's going to be that many more people in. All right, well, it's the high school that'll get dispersed. But if midpoint there was an influx of more students coming in, then you'd also probably have some parents that are going to have an influx of, oh, that's too many. So now I would need to pull my child out as well. So I think that parents, more than anything, need the stability. So whatever the decision is, right, seeing that decision through, with the exception of Kate, right, on a case by case basis, always we meet the needs of our families. But there's just as much of an argument for not allowing too much fluidity, because then that is like a domino to those students that are there, whether or not they're going to want to stay there.
Thanks, Lisa. Any other questions, comments? Vin Lefkowitz?
So we've had two parent perspectives. I really feel compelled to give a teacher perspective. And again, the superintendent made the statement that Charahoe is one of the few districts, if the only district, who's done a full reopening. That has not gone unnoticed to other members. And again, even though we had the engineers come in and do the report, there's still grave concern about the fact that the plan is that we're going to have more kids in, and then we're going to shut the windows. It's still a huge concern. So I'm kind of hoping that the district is going to, really examine, because some of the things that I'm seeing is that we're doing everything in our power to pack in as many kids as we possibly can, where, okay, well, if we don't need transportation, we can still, throw a few more kids in there. I would encourage the school committee to kind of come in and walk through the hallways. I'm not saying that the kids are doing a bad job, but it is packed. I know my classroom, I have, sometimes upwards of 20 kids. I know that there are some other classrooms where there's going to be upwards of 24 kids in a particular room. So while I appreciate, and being a parent myself, I respect that, but the teachers are the ones that are on the front lines, along with the support professionals. And with all the, and the other reason for my statements is because cases are going up. And what we're starting to see is that more and more cases are going up. The other thing that's making me extremely nervous is the fact that the DOH is having a huge backlog with contact tracing. So I'm just hoping that the committee can kind of see it from that perspective as well, because again, I think every teacher wants to give the best education possible, but we also want to be safe. And the more you start trying to add again, I think we could potentially be playing a really dangerous game if we're thinking, okay, well, we can just continue. We've been good so far, and we've dodged a couple of issues here or there. But when I start talking to people in the medical profession, when I start talking to school nurses, their perspective is a little different. And so I just I'm hoping and praying that the committee, uses caution with this, because, I do know that Charahoe has high standards, but I also hope that we're going to, look at every possible scenario to ensure the safety and the sustainability, because, adding more in, you could be playing with fire. And I would hate to see that happen.
Thank you, Ben. Further questions, comments? So Linda Lyle.
Thank you, Chair. Gina, just to kind of talk a little bit about Vin's concerns, do we have like a tipping point? Like, do we have a time where we say there's just too many bodies in one room?
Yes, so if we can't do the recommended spacing, we would
Right.
say that. And if to Vin's point, if we did not have the ability to put in the air purifiers or HEPA filters where they needed to be, that would be a reason for us not to move forward.
Okay. And then would we go, just a follow up, would we go on a more hybrid model then maybe? Or we would look at it at that point and see, okay.
Right, if we were concerned about spacing, now just to remind everybody that for the Department of Education did not approve any plan, and ours was originally a partial plan for K through 5. So K through 5 will have to be in every day. That's the Department of Education's guardrail. So 6 through 12 is where we would look at if we couldn't get spacing, more hybrid model.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I have Dana Palmiciano. and then Tom Purney. Let's see, I still show as muted. Can you, are you able to unmute yourself?
There we
There we
go.
go.
Gina, I think that you just touched on this. I'm not sure if it's the final answer. I'm speaking specifically about the elementary school return. I have a student, and I'll speak specifically about Richmond. I just wondered, I understand what the Department of Education has said regarding K through 5. I just wondered if there was a consideration for potentially a hybrid return if more students return. In some classrooms it is, it is tight. I just wondered if that was at all being considered.
So for the Department of Ed for K through 5, the only way they would right now allow sort of permissible to change the model would be if we saw different cases in our region or at that school. So they determine limited, partial, or full. However, with like, for example, 6 through 12, we have a little bit more flexibility and can look at things like transportation and things like that to move to different models. But K through 5 is where they asked us to send in the team first. So we would reach out to the what they call the EDOC, and they would come in to provide alternatives for us to be thinking about how to keep our youngest learners in school
Okay.
and
Thank you.
appropriately distanced and with all the guidance.
Okay. Thank you.
Tom Purney.
Yeah, so I just had a quick question regarding PPE and the supplies, the cleaning supplies that the district currently has, making sure we had enough to sustain at least probably through the holiday season, and making sure there weren't any backups regarding that. And just to Vin's point, really, there's some certain concerns I think about the sustainability of this going forward. Our membership obviously is running the front lines with Vin's, and certain things are, I think, falling behind a little bit as far as custodial duties, especially on that second shift. Buildings are getting clean, but I would say there's a concern there as far as sustainability going forward. Doing this for another 4 or 5 months per se. So there's just some concern there, I think, as far as being able to manage the custodial duty, especially for that second shift cleaning route. So just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Just took a note here. David Stahl.
Yeah, I guess all the conversations helping me to kind of reframe what I'm driving at, which is kind of, we were asked if there's I think Linda Lyle, I think you said it, is there a tipping point? What's that number that you can't kind of go past? I think what I'm looking for really is as a school committee, what is our goal for how many we'd like to have in? Because really what I was hearing initially is we want everybody to come in. It's like we were really pushing hard to get everybody in person. I know it's state goal. I felt like that was sort of a district goal. Like, let's try to get as many people as possible in person. And now it sounds like, and I don't know if it's because cases are going up and because there's some difficulty, but now it sort of sounds like we're saying, but let's not get too many in, or let's not have too many more come in, because one, and I heard it, Lisa, I understand it, if you've got kids that are already in there, how many more come in, and then it becomes uncomfortable for the ones that decided they were comfortable with the numbers as they were. But that's everybody's everybody's right to be in the school or not, and everybody's decision with what to do with how many are in the school. So in other words, if all those people had said, yes, we want to be in, then Lisa might not have been comfortable. So, but are we trying to discourage that now? So really, I'm not asking sort of what's our tipping point or even what's our max. I'm saying, are we okay with the idea of going to partial if more kids come in? And are we really trying to avoid that? Or do we even, rather than just sort of dealing with whatever happens, do we have a goal? Would we rather have 100% in person, but be doing the partial? Or would we rather have only 80% in person and we want to try to keep 20% that are willing to be virtual? Do we have a goal or a way that we prefer it, or something we're shooting for or aiming for? Which way should we encourage parents? I guess that's kind of what I'm asking.
Thanks, Dave. Lisa?
So, Dave, right? Yes. The conversation when we were originally having this as part of the reopening plan in August, if you go back to those meetings, there was actually quite a bit of discussion actually in support of some of Vin's comments around really asking the superintendent, what authority do we have as a school committee, right? And at that time, as I do now, I would have voted then for a blended opening with alternating days, so that that all students could participate in in-school learning, but they would all not be there at once. But as I recall, at that meeting, it was made very clear to us that RIDE wasn't really letting us choose a preference. We had to be prepared for all of those options. And then based on what families selected, and then some concrete data around buses, we're going to be told what to do. And there might have been some flexibility, I think, in the first few weeks as to how we onboarded, like how we got in. So far, I'm right, Gina? So to answer your question now, David, if I felt that if it changed and we as a school committee, as an elected body could influence the district decision, that's where I would stand. I would want all students that want to have an opportunity to participate in school, all of them be able to do so within the week, but not all at the same time, otherwise known as, right, the blended model. But my understanding is, unfortunately, we don't get to decide that, and I wish we did, because parents that may meet everybody's needs better. So I love this conversation. I don't know that anything's changed and that we get to decide.
Thanks, Lisa. I've got Robin Woodmansey and then Ben Lefkowitz again. Robin?
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. I just wanted to follow up on a couple points or questions that were asked. First, with Dana's question regarding the K-4 area and concerns about spacing. I understand that RIDE wants all K-4 to be in person, but I know in some elementary schools there are classes that are kind of at the minimum distance right now. So I think for parents to make decisions, that's a little tough one with not knowing what will happen to the classrooms, if they do go past that minimum. I know there was talk about them moving to other areas such as the gym, but then I think parents have other concerns about the air quality in the gym and kind of what that would look like. So do you have any information? I know that's a tough thing because it's quite hypothetical, but I know there are some, especially at Richmond, there's a grade that is at the maximum now. So if like one student comes back, it's going to be pushing that.
It's actually exactly what you said. So if we could not get the recommended distance, it would be looking to see if there was an alternative room that was available. You could, some schools have used areas like the gymnasium, the library, areas like that. But all of our buildings were tested around the air quality, the air exchanges, so that we're with the engineering report we have, we know exactly what any room would need to be able to ensure that we put the safety of our students and teachers first and foremost. We
Okay,
wouldn't
great.
continue with the plan that didn't do that.
Exactly. Great. Thank you. I just, and then I wanted to just throw it out there because I know we kind of do have our hands tied by RIDE as far as what we can do. But as we've seen in other districts, of course, we should always be looking out for the best for our families, our teachers, our custodian, all of our administrations. So I just hope that's in everyone's mind too, kind of following up with what others had said. While yes, RIDE is trying to encourage everyone to full in person, we also want to make sure that we can handle that throughout all levels. So I know as a parent, that's always, I think we're all playing the struggling game, right? Of what we feel comfortable with. But I think that should be the highest thing for us is what's comfortable and good for everyone, regardless of what RIDE has to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Vin.
I kind of want to discuss something that Lisa said, and that's the whole idea that our hands are tied by RIDE. The one thing that I will say is, if that really is the case, then why isn't the Providence Journal, Turn to 10, all the news channels going to every other superintendent in the state, asking them why they're not following the policy that was set forth by RIDE and the governor? We're early on in the process, we were heard that there could be sanctions, that, the governor kind of came out and was trying to talk to parents and so on and so forth. Even going back to some of the things that Mr. Day said about the amount of money that was given, from the state. I feel that while I appreciate the fact that we are trying to do everything that we can, I'm not seeing that RIDE or the governor is really doing anything to kind of hold people to the fire. I've checked with, people that I know, and they're saying that there have not been sanctions that have been put on districts that are doing this. I'm not saying that we have to go 12 steps back, but if the goal is sustainability, if the goal is to provide the best education possible for kids in the safest environment possible, I just would want the district to really be at the forefront to be able to say, yeah, our goal is this. And as a teacher, I don't think any teacher would say in a normal year that they would want kids at home. I think you always want the kids in front of you. But when at the high school, when now we're looking at, okay, this classroom was in room whatever, and now we got to move it because there's too many kids in it. Like, that's where I start to get nervous that we're playing with fire, because all it's going to take is that one case or that one outbreak, and then everything that we've done up to this point could be, we could be back to the beginning. So that's all I'm trying to get across. I'm not trying to make, I'm not trying to knock what the superintendent has done. I thought the work that she did with Richmond, considering what the Department of Health recommended, which was, oh, you can open. The fact that she decided to err on the side of caution and keep that building closed for the day, if I had two hands, I'd clap louder. So I'm just asking that same sort of mentality we can use going forward, because I just, unless I'm wrong and someone can correct me, but I've looked and I've asked, and I don't know of any district that is, at the mercy of what RIDE and the governor are saying. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thanks, man. So I have Bill Day, and then Lisa Russell, and then Diane McKean.
Yes, I agree with a lot of what Ben said. Being a member of the school committee for a long time, I don't have a lot of confidence, never had a lot of confidence in the state of Rhode Island treating all districts equally. I certainly have concerns that has been said that they're going to pick and choose who they want to chastise and who they want to make the bad guy out of this. But one thing that I think that we all should know, and that Gina and Jane and the other members of the staff started way back at the end of the last school year to get plans going forward so that we could have a brick and mortar school system operating. A lot of the other school districts, my understanding and the rumor is that a lot of them had no intentions of opening in September, so they didn't even have any plans going forward. I think we have some good basic plans. I think we have a staff over here from Ben to Tom and all the other people involved that we can change some of the things that we're doing in midstream without having any significant health issues with our staff, because as they both indicated, they are the ones that make sure that we can have in-person learning. So I have confidence in the fact that because we want to do the right thing to keep our kids in school and keep them in an environment where an education is going to mean something. I'm of the opinion that a few years from now, someone's going to take and do a study and find out that, you know, the kids have been shortchanged with their education system as the way it's presented for this pandemic situation. So I would like to have us move forward with this and work full cooperation with the unions and everyone else involved so that we can keep this as normal as possible. So thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, I have Lisa Rosso next, and then Diane McKean.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you.
I want to apologize first for keeping my camera off. I did a meeting the other day, and it's very frustrating to speak with somebody without seeing them. So I apologize, but it's in everyone's best interest that I do. So I wanted to just ask a question because of the case at Richmond and also the CDC's new guidance with close contacts and the whole 15-minute thing that they've changed in regards to specialists that are between different schools that travel, you know, between Richmond, Ashway, Hope Valley, Charlestown. I think I just wanted to ask what the plan is for that. Are they being tested? Is there different sort of scheduling? I know my son has told me some things at school. So I don't know if you can speak to that to maybe make me feel a little more comfortable having my kids being in school and, you know, with what just happened at Richmond and, you know.
Sure, absolutely. No, it was a great question. So part of the work with the contact tracing is that the principal, the school nurse, myself, we provide them all of the seating charts, who's in what room, when, and, you know, recess, lunches, they get everything. And Miss Martin did a great job ensuring that she was ready, and she was, and actually had pretty much called out any contact tracing necessary based on what she had known based on her seating charts. And the contact tracers, they go in, they review all of Miss Martin's and the teachers' seating charts, line charts, teachers, bus attendants, and then they determine who is the actual contact trace. Sometimes, you know, I don't pretend to be the expert. We may think someone is, but they confirm, and then they provide us with the list of who they believe is a close contact. The school, we don't quarantine anyone. We simply, we can recommend people to stay home until they get back from the Department of Health. But the Department of Health has that line, the hotline. So any parent is always welcome to call the Department of Health directly to ask to discuss with someone the contact tracing and how that works. But they're the ones that tell us who fell into the contact tracing based on all the information that's reviewed.
Okay, so I guess my question is more about scheduling. So if like a specialist teacher was teaching in the classroom where there was a positive case in Richmond, then he or she is then allowed to, or allowed quotations, to then teach in my child's classroom at a different school.
If they're not considered a close contact, yes. Because those teachers are all interviewed as well. So they speak to the teachers as well.
Okay, so I guess my question is more than at the state level. So the state is not following the CDC guidelines as far as close contacts then, because their new CDC was like 15 minutes throughout a day. It wasn't like me standing next to you for 15 minutes straight. So if a teacher is teaching in a classroom for half an hour, they would then be a close contact to everybody in the classroom. Am I?
There's three things. So don't forget, there's also mask wearing and then the 6 feet of distance. So there are teachers, and that's why they interview the teachers to find out, are you a teacher that stays in front of the room? Do you walk around the room? So they gather all that through their interview process.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Diane McKean.
Did I do that? Am I right?
I can hear you.
Okay. I'm from Richmond, and obviously you've heard a couple people from Richmond tonight, so you can tell that we're very concerned. Our third grade is busting. We have 3 super full rooms, and that is nerve-wracking to everybody as students are going to start coming back. So we are just trying to be a little proactive. Those rooms right now are close enough that the kids cannot eat lunch in their room, have snack in their room. Their mask cannot come off at all. I actually take 2 of those classes to the gym. We eat in the gym. They have little chairs they put on the floor. Another class goes to the library. So even a couple kids are going to make a big difference. And those teachers and the staff, we're really nervous about that there is something going to be set up immediately that we're going to be able to find a solution, even if 3 kids say they're coming back at the end of the semester.
Thanks, Diane. Any further comments, questions?
I just wanted to say 2 things. One, I think that if I heard it right, I think Diane was asking a question. Is there going to be an immediate plan when they come back? I'm not sure if I heard that right, but maybe Gina could just speak to that.
I'm sorry, I didn't actually. So I'm sure. So I know Ms. Martin had also talked about like some of the rooms, for example, at Charlestown and Ashway already removed kidney tables. Richmond had not. That was something that Sharon, and again, it would be, we wouldn't allow, if the spacing was less than the guidance, we wouldn't use the room. But I do believe Sharon was looking into the removal of the kidney table as an additional option, which some schools already had done.
Okay, I think in that, if I'm still unmuted, I think in that room, that would make room for another desk or whatever, but I just don't want to show up one day with 2 kids coming in and we're all not, I mean, I know the protocol was after the first semester for students to come back, but there are some being allowed to come back now. So the numbers are changing now. It's not even all at the end of the semester. We're just worried. We're very worried, obviously. The 3rd grade, the parents, anybody that spoke tonight, those are parents of 3rd graders.
Yes, and what I can tell you is, in all of our schools, we've had students come back. For what we've said at the very beginning is we would take any case by case, and as David mentioned earlier, people's situations changed, and we've gotten those emails. So if principals could accommodate, again, checking spacing, if they needed busing, then they did their best to get students back into class if they could.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Further questions or comments?
I had my own, just to say that I have a kindergarten student from my home all the way to a 12th grade student, and some are in the process of going back into elementary. I just wanted to say this, that the communication has been really good. I think our superintendent's communication has been really good from the virtual learners perspective. The kids' teachers have been great at all the grade levels. And they've been great about the transition of going back in, and some are staying out. And I just want to say that this is really good that we have the conversations. And from my end, from the kindergarten all the way through the 12th grade, communication and everything has been really good. And everybody's been super helpful and accommodating for us. So I just didn't want anyone to think that I was asking questions and not throwing out encouragement and praise where it's due also, because in the process of trying to make the decision as parents with kids across all the grade levels, the communication and process has been really good. So thank you for that.
Thanks, David. All right, folks. I'm going to close discussion on business section B and move us to business section C. The scouts, you're done for the evening. I hope you took good notes, so you can log off.
Chair, are you their merit badge instructor?
I am not the instructor,
Okay,
kind of the assistant.
I was getting the impression you were.
Just trying to help.
Okay. So our next item on the agenda is the Charahoe one-to-one student parent guardian contract and privacy concerns. And this was an item brought up on the agenda at the request of Clay Johnson.
Thanks, Gina. Clay, floor is yours, sir.
Great. So we have this policy, and I think this is going back, I don't know if I remember the whole timeline, but the ACLU had some concerns with our policy, and we actually adopted some language from them which limited or prevented the remote use of microphones and cameras from the district. Since the pandemic, the ACLU has now gone back and looked statewide at districts' policies and put out a 22-page report. It was in late September. So I meant to bring this up at the last meeting, but I didn't make the last meeting. So I'm not sure this merits a full discussion of the 22 pages, but the one chunk that struck me was the concern that our language is that there's no expectation of privacy. So if you turn in our policy to page 2, at the bottom, there's the no expectation of privacy section. And I guess just to kick off the discussion, I'll make a motion and see where the discussion goes. I would suggest, my motion is to eliminate the first 2 paragraphs of that section and replace it with the following language. The district will respect the privacy of students and not access students' devices unless there is reasonable suspicion that the student is involved in misconduct. Any access will be authorized by either a warrant or written approval by the superintendent. And I think that goes a long way to addressing what I think are concerns that were highlighted by their report.
Ryan, I would like a recommendation if John is still on, because the policy itself is not put on for revision.
Right, but
John is
we've
still
got,
on. I would like some legal opinion on as to whether or not that needs to be put on under policy for revision, or if it can be revised under this agenda item.
I see John is still on. John, are you able to hear us? We can't hear you, sir. I think he's back on. I see him back on mute. Let's see if this. Must unmute. John, we still can't hear you. All right, well, John, while you work on audio, maybe you can call in. So Donna, your concern is that this was posted. This was brought up on, this item is on the agenda. Well, okay, so yeah, this is just the one-to-one, but it's with respect to our, it doesn't have our, so your concern is that the policy specifically wasn't mentioned, and so therefore changing the policy is not authorized under the OMA?
Be my concern. I don't know legally. I know he has privacy concerns, but revising the policy when the policy is not listed as the agenda item is, I would just want his legal opinion.
I have John just called my phone. He said Donna's correct. It would have to be under the policy section, John? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Under the, would need to
You're
be
getting a little
voted in the
feedback there.
policy. So we can just have under that piece.
Okay, so my take on this is we are not allowed to change the policy because we haven't posted the policy change, but there's nothing to stop us or prohibit us from discussing exactly what Clay is bringing up. So I'd like to continue the discussion on that, and unfortunately we won't be making a motion tonight to change the policy.
Should he be
So
rescinding
with
the motion, sir?
I'm sorry, what?
So should he be rescinding the motion?
Clay, can you rescind your motion? to
I
change the
withdraw
law?
my motion.
Thank you, sir. Folks, this is open for discussion. And Bill, I've got Bill and then David Stahl.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as I understood Mr. Johnson, he said something to the effect that he wouldn't be accepted, have privacy on student equipment. This policy doesn't pertain to student equipment. This it clearly states in the first sentence that it's all district-owned equipment. You know, the students don't have the right to dictate to us what they can do or not do with our equipment. This is our equipment. It's loaned to them. It's understanding. They sign paperwork, the whole 9 yards. So I don't understand why we're trying to create an issue when, you know, the ACLU is always looking for issues, and I don't believe this is an issue. The students don't have a right of privacy in the lockers in the school building. This has been proven in the court of law in many places. There's a whole different ballgame as it pertains to school buildings and school equipment. So I'm thinking this is just something, a feel-good type of thing for somebody who probably hasn't contributed as much as he should have in the past to the school committee. So this is his way out.
Yeah, hold on that. Yeah, all right, Bill. I get that. I understand your point on that, saying that we own the equipment, and therefore I take it your position is the policy shouldn't change. I see other hands up for this discussion, so I'm going to keep going and circle back on it. David, and then, I'm sorry, Linda, did your hand come up as well? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so
Thank you, Ms. McAllister.
So I think this is a good suggestion by Clay. I think I understand the sentiment of what he's saying. That is, you know, there should be, when the devices are sent home with students. I went through that orientation and that sort of thing with our students, and they're encouraged that this is the device that's going to stick with them through their high school years. You know, so it can be used for personal things. It will be used for personal things or communication as long as they don't violate school policies. And I think what Clay is driving at, and he can correct me where I'm wrong, I think what he's driving at is that idea of not unnecessarily monitoring people's activities, that there's an invasion of privacy if there's not some sort of reason to be monitoring. And my only question for Clay, for clarification, is he mentioned just students. I wonder if the policy for students, staff, everyone should be worded the same way. In suggesting that Clay, your motion that you would have made tonight might be for everyone on school property, that every communication is going to be monitored unless there's a reason to. I think it's an interesting conversation, and I think we just have to be careful that we're not wording things in such a way that it'll appear that things are being unreasonably monitored or censored or that kind of thing.
Thanks, David. So Linda Lyle, and then Sheila Grover, and Peg Boyd, I do see your hand. And when there's no school committee member, I'll be calling you.
Thanks, Chair. I'm sort of, as everyone's talking, I'm reading the policy again. I guess what I'd be concerned with is that I think the district has a right to monitor probably activities as long as it's during the school day. And I know, well, then we get into trouble because David said, I guess I didn't realize that they could use it for personal, because when we sent stuff home, it was only used for school. They weren't allowed to use it for anything else, like watching movies or doing anything that was personal. But so I guess what I definitely would want John in on this as far as if we're going to rewrite this policy. But I know I understand, Clay, what you're getting at, and I kind of sort of agree with it. But I think that, again, it should probably be monitored, definitely be monitored during the school day when the students are on for school purposes. I don't know how I feel about them being on for personal use, but it is what it is. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Sheila, and then we'll circle back to Clay.
I think it's a little bit worrying to me, at least, that you're setting yourself up for having to ask permission to get into kids' computers. And I think it's safer for the kids to have them go into it with no expectation of privacy. You've set out a very good policy that's very clear about what is permissible and what is not. And you are giving this computer to the student as a tool to use to further their education is the primary reason for it. So why should we be beholden to that student that we are giving this device to? And you're going to set yourself up for a lot of red tape. And I really think that that's not, because if you need to get into that computer to, find out if that student is at risk, I mean, there's a million reasons why you could need to get into that computer. And there's a million reasons why you should never expect any privacy when you're using a borrowed device.
Thanks, Sheila. Clay, give you an opportunity. I know there are a couple of those questions were kind of in your general direction, if you want to address those, or if you just have greater clarification on your position and rationale, and then Ms. McAllister.
Sure. So my thinking was driven by the pandemic. We're now doing schooling at home. And so we're connecting district devices. We're also connecting non-district devices. And the way the policy reads is that we can access, as the district, somebody's non-district device connected to our system. So for instance, the ACLU specifically calls out Google Go. And with this, you can access a parent's computer and see their browsing history, maybe see files, maybe see legal documents, maybe see health documents. And then on top of that privacy concern, if we're going to be monitoring students, I think that also gives us a responsibility. So if we're going to monitor a student and we see a student has written a suicide note on their computer, we now have a responsibility to respond to that. And I think it gets us into a whole place that's really not the business of the school. And I think it's worth a bright line on what we monitor and what we don't. And the default should be, we should have some suspicion before we take action, rather than the default being that we can poke around anywhere we want to.
Thanks, Clay. Ms. McAllister.
Yes, I'm uncomfortable right now with thinking about changing this policy. And I think what I would have to do is see the language that Clay is proposing. I guess I'm a visual learner. So I could look at the two and kind of think about, why we are monitoring kids' use of it and why wouldn't we? So that's I would just like to see it in writing before I have a conversation with it. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other committee member hands up. I'm going to move to Peg Boyd.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So I want to circle back to Clay's comment at the end there, is that in this distance learning and virtual environment that we're in right now, we are working off of a lot of cloud software and cloud learning materials. And right now, we don't have necessarily a district policy that says that work must be done on a district provided computer. So there is concern currently in that cloud environment that there may be violations as it relates to sharing of that information, specifically as you relate to the Google. So what I've noticed with my own distance learners, specifically in the middle school, is as students are working on the actual document, teachers are in the document monitoring their work, which is okay. But that's just one example of how it could go further. So I guess my caution is this could be a slippery slope and probably heeds some very good discussion and legal advice down the road.
Thanks. Thank you. Appreciate the input on that one.
Ryan, I think John's asking if he can be recognized. I think he's on
John,
now.
the floor is yours, sir.
Okay.
So John, admit. Let's see. And shows him connecting to audio. There we go. See the. Hey, John. I can see you. Can't hear you though.
The host needs to unmute me.
There you go. I can hear you now.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I've been able to listen to parts of this while I've been trying to figure out the technology to go on. I think a little background is in order. A considerable amount of time was spent drafting our current policy by a subcommittee that included parents, teachers, Superintendent Ritchie, myself, and an awful lot of thought went into the current policy. I really want to echo the points that Mrs. Grover made, that this is a very clear policy. It's very clear that there is no expectation in privacy. What is being proposed is incredibly ambiguous. It invites all sorts of litigation with regard to the school, because the question will become whether or not somebody has a reasonable suspicion or not. I think it is very bad public policy. With regard to the concerns raised by the ACLU, again, the ACLU is not in the schools on a daily basis. I also want to remind the school committee that you also have a policy that students have no expectation of privacy in their lockers. We've had that policy on as long as I've been in Charahoe, and probably for about 20 years. This is no different. The rules are very clear. To change the rules at this point is an invitation for litigation. It's also an invitation, frankly, for wrongs to go unremedied. We have had instances where we have had to take possession of school equipment because school equipment, frankly, was being used for inappropriate purposes.
Thanks, John. Do we have somebody on who can comment on how monitoring is done today? Gina?
Eric
Is
is here. I don't know if that's.
I didn't want to put Eric on the spot, but it was like it's supposed to default to you. Eric, do you know how
I do.
the monitoring is done? Is it dynamic? Is it something that has to be initiated specifically? Can you talk to that?
For the most part, it's initiated by the deans. So a dean will contact us and say, so-and-so, I got a report that's from a teacher that so-and-so was doing X, Y, Z. Can you look into it? And in that case, we'll go look for what they asked for, if that makes sense.
It does, but outside of that, who can actually do the monitoring? Who has the capability to do that?
No one outside of IT. It's primarily Sean, myself, and the computer techs.
All right, and
I should also clarify that when we are asked to look into a student issue, it's me and Sean.
Okay, so access to the actual monitoring is limited to you and Sean, and you never monitor without having it initiated from the dean. Can anybody else initiate it?
No. If a teacher, I mean, like an administrator, a building administrator may ask us to look into something, but if a teacher were to come to us and say, can you look at so-and-so's computer, we'll refer them to the dean, and they have to follow that process to the dean or the building administrator to then contact us if they want to pursue it.
And is there record keeping? Do you keep a record of those requests and have a log of that?
For the most part, thinking about that for a minute here. Usually it goes through their PowerSchool. Each student's record in PowerSchool has a log of disciplinary issues. And to my understanding, whenever something like this comes up, it goes in there.
Right, but I'm talking specifically about the request for you to look into some sort of specific activity.
It would just be an email chain.
Okay. David, and then Clay.
Yeah, I don't want Clay to think I'm gonna like do his bidding for him. Maybe I should have let him go first. I just wonder if John didn't catch part of what Clay was saying in nuance, that some things are different since we've been doing this virtual stuff than they were when much time was spent on this policy. Just because much time was spent on it before doesn't mean you don't ever look at it again. So I think what might have been missed is that Clay was saying that other people's devices, for example, my family used a family computer for virtual school at home connected to the Charahoe system. So the question that's being raised is not a question that would have existed when the policy was created, which is, does the school IT department have the freedom or ability, do I lose the expectation of privacy that I have on my personal computer at home because my child has to use it during virtual learning, either while we're waiting for another device, or that was elementary school where they weren't one-to-one yet when we started the virtual. So I think you also have to talk about cell phones and that kind of thing, which how when they're personal devices, but when they're in the school building, if they're connected, I just think there's more nuance here. Technology is changing quickly, and we can't simply say that we spent a lot of time on a policy, so we shouldn't look at it again. Some things are different now.
I want to make it very clear that that's an oversimplification of what I said. I did hear what Clay said, and I want to make it very clear. And frankly, Mr. Stoll, you said that you chose to use your personal device. All students in Charahoe are issued school devices. If they choose to use a device other than their school device, that's a decision they make. Just like if you go to TF Green and you choose to fly, you do not have an expectation of privacy when you go through the TSA. And likewise, when you put something in your locker at Charahoe High School, it is very clear that you do not have an expectation of privacy in terms of what you put in your locker at Charahoe High School. The policy that you have now is very clear in terms of where the line is, that there is not an expectation of policy when you are using the school system. And if you don't want to use your personal computer at home, Mr. Stahl, don't use the school issue one.
Yeah, it wasn't available yet, John. That's why I'm talking about some nuance here, because my elementary students were not one-to-one. So when we started virtual, there was a little bit of lag time. Kudos to the IT department, no criticism, Eric, of you and Sean, you guys worked quickly and well, but there was an interim time in there where if the kids were going to start school and be virtual, they had to use a personal device. So I'm simply saying, does the policy now say that if those kind of situations, which are unpredictable, when those come up, does the school then have access that's unlimited to my personal device? And is that problematic?
To the extent that you are using the school system, we have access to the school system.
And my personal device.
If you link your personal device to the school system, yeah, the answer to that question, I'm not the technology person, but I believe the answer is yes, because you are linking to the school system. And frankly, there are, again, good reasons for that in terms of you're linking to the system for all wonderful purposes, that is to provide your children with education. There are people who frankly would like to link to our school system for nefarious purposes. And we need to have a clear rule so that if something like that happens, no, we don't have to go looking for the superintendent to find the superintendent and have the superintendent have to call the attorney, and for the attorney to have to document it, the superintendent to have to document it, in the event that instead of somebody trying to, for example, send ransomware to the school district, as happened in another community about 10 miles from Charahoe, that the IT department can move immediately. We have had situations in the past where we have had to move on a very quick basis in order to preserve information that was subsequently used in criminal proceedings. And it was possible to use that information in criminal proceedings because there was no expectation of privacy in the school device. So if the school committee wants to do this, I want to make it very clear that you are tying the hands of the superintendent, and then when there are consequences, such as someone attaching to the system and putting ransomware on our system, when there are people who use their school-issued devices for inappropriate purposes, when the superintendent, in the best of intentions, makes a mistake, and she thinks that, for example, a laptop is being used for pornography, but it's not. It's being used for art history, and she makes a mistake and she gets sued for it. As a result, the committee can say to her, we're really sorry. The rule that we have is a very clear rule for the people who have to follow it. And the people who have to follow it are the people who use devices that link to our system. It's also a very clear rule for the superintendent and for the technology department and the deans and the principals to administer. I also want to say that the very issues that are being discussed here, regardless of the change of circumstances, are the exact same issues that were raised 3 or 4 years ago. They are the issues that have not changed in the slightest.
Clay.
I think if what Eric described was a written procedure, that would go a long way to alleviating my concern over this problem. Clearly, there's a protocol that they follow. There's an authorization step. There's a tracking step. Those are the things that I think put guardrails on this going awry. So maybe it's not changing this policy, but it's the procedures that we use behind it, and how do we ensure that the IT department follows that when there's a change of personnel or someone makes a request that doesn't follow that process.
I would simply, to the extent that you are talking about that is a great suggestion. It's something that the IT department can look at. I just want to make it very clear that I do not recommend that you change the language in there with regard to an expectation of privacy. In terms of tracking, that's a different question, and I can see the merit in doing something like that in terms of procedure. But in terms of an expectation of privacy, if you tell somebody that they have a privacy right and then you even accidentally violate it, you'll be sued and you owe people money, even though you're trying to do the right thing.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Clay. I actually am in agreement with Clay in the sense that, I think if this kind of falls into that, not disciplinary space, but close enough to it in the sense that if access is only by two people and it has to be initiated by a request, I think that it would make sense to track that request, understand, why the request was made, and then the outcome as well. So we can ensure that our students, while they have no expectation of privacy, there is no, and nobody is invading their privacy without cost. We have no motion on the floor, folks. So I'm
George
not.
Abbott has his hand up, Chair.
I'm sorry, who?
George Abbott.
He's not on my screen. Sorry, George, I don't see you. The floor is yours, sir. George. I can't hear you. Can you unmute?
How about that? Can you hear me now?
Thank you. I can.
Hypothetical, if a member of the community were to go to the Charahoe website and access the school committee section for meeting schedules and agenda, would they be subject to this surrendering the contents of their personal computers to Charahoe?
So the question is whether or not somebody who just goes to our website, we then get access to their personal information or whatever's on their device.
The answer to that, as far as I understand, the answer to that is no. On the other hand, we have had an instance where we did have to determine who accessed the site because, frankly, about 5 years ago, there was something posted of a highly personal nature in the school committee package, and we had to take some immediate steps to protect the confidentiality of someone. And fortunately, there had only been about 8 people who had looked at the website at that time. So that information is available, but on the other hand, in terms of knowing what people's personal computers are who look on our site, the answer to that is no.
It wouldn't open up their personal computers.
Yeah. No, this is about our computers and our laptops being used for inappropriate purposes, such as pornography, such as gaming, such as cyberbullying. A good example of this is the fact is that the school committee should then not complain with regard to issues of cyberbullying. That's one of the reasons why we are able to detect and protect children who are the victim of cyberbullying.
Okay, I guess you answered my question. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't a slippery slope to sort of.
It is not.
Thanks, George. Thanks, John. Any additional discussion? Any additional comments, folks? I see no hands. I am closing discussion on business letter C. That concludes business for this evening. This moves us to consent agenda items. I'm polling A1 and A2. Does anybody else need any other consent agenda items pulled?
Do you have anybody, Chair?
I see no hands asking for things to be pulled. Let me just double check. I see none. No, so the only two items pulled are A1 and A2. The rest
Chair?
is, yes, sir.
I make a motion to move the remainder, but before I do, I would like to recognize the donations. First donation from Linda and Paul Reynolds of East Greenwich, Rhode Island, of a 4-foot by 6-foot reversible easel style blackboard melamine chalkboard valued at approximately $350 to Richmond Elementary School for their outdoor tent classroom, and a shout out to their grandson Liam, who attends Richmond Elementary School. 2, a donation from the Charahoe Rotary Club of 1,000 N95 masks to the district. Very well appreciated. And 3, a donation from Colin Manlove of a DaVinci Junior 10 3D printer, quarter roll of black PLA, power cord, and 16 sheets of bed adhesion stickers to Ashray Elementary School. That is my motion.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do I have a second? Thank you. Motion made by Craig, seconded by Linda Lyle. Those in favor of the motion? Thank you. I call that unanimous. All right. If I got it wrong, please, committee members, sing out. Not all of you are on my same page. This brings up A1.
Chair?
Yes, sir.
Make a motion to approve A1, the executive session minutes of October 13th, 2020. Approval of the executive session minutes of September 22nd, 2020. Minutes not sealed.
Thank you. We have a motion by Craig, seconded by Linda Lyle. Any discussion on this? Those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Thank you. Those abstaining?
Oh,
Clay, thank you.
excuse me, I'm abstaining.
Gotcha. So George Abbott and Clay Johnson abstained. The rest were in favor of the motion. This brings up A2.
Chair, make a motion to approve A2, the regular session minutes of October 13th, 2020.
Thank you. We have a motion by Craig, seconded by Linda Lyle. This is open for discussion. David?
I just wanted to clarify, it was simply a typo in those minutes. My concern was with Buddhist meditation taught in school, not Buddhist medication. I don't know if there is any Buddhist medication, but that specifically was not what I was interested in. So it was the meditation piece. It was a typo, but I thought it was funny. So quick clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Stahl. Further discussion? All right, discussion closed. Those in favor of the motion? Thank you. Those abstaining?
I'm abstaining. Excuse me, that was my blunder.
I understood. So it's George Abbott and Clay Johnson are abstaining. The rest are in favor of approving the minutes of October 13th, 2020 without Buddhist medication. This brings us to reports.
Okay, so right now we have no subcommittee report, so I'll move to the superintendent's report, which is our Take It Outside grant was approved by the state. So we will be receiving $55,000 to spend down by December 31st. Katie Kirkosian was the lead on writing that grant, and then with the assistance from myself, Sean Cole, and Ned Draper, and several teachers throughout the district who provided input on ideas to be able to make this a reality. So the focus will be outdoor Wi-Fi to extend across all of our schools. Sean is working on those proposals right now on aerial views so we can see how much we can cover. And then we are also creating what we call MOCS, M-O-C-S, Mobile Outdoor Classroom Kits. So there were 127 applicants to the state. So they said it was very competitive and they felt that ours was innovative and creative and they were happy to fund it.
Excellent. Thank you.
And then for C is just our upcoming events, the middle school picture day, we have another flu clinic at the high school gym on November 2nd. As you all know, election day. There's also a staff PD day, which we will be allowing the staff the option to work either from home or in school, knowing that the elections, there'll be a lot of public in the building. And just to make sure everyone knows, both Jason and Shauna have an excellent plan for cleaning throughout the day, as well as right after the election breakdown. So we're ready for school the following day. And then there's a PTO meeting for the middle school on the 4th, which is virtual, and then the Hope Valley Picture Day.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, folks, this brings us to school committee requests for future agenda items and or legal opinions. Mr. Luzon. I can't hear you, Craig.
You hear me now?
I can hear you. Yep.
First of all, John, I like the look. You're getting ready for the holiday season. So I don't have a request for an agenda item, but I do have a request for maybe an FYI. After listening to the conversation over the school reopenings, I don't know, maybe RIDE provides it, or maybe we can obtain it somehow. I would like to see some information on every district and who's open and to what degree they're open.
I've been trying to get that for, that's no easy task, Mr. Luzon.
I know, but you know, I remember this whole discussion when we had it, and I was on the impression that everybody was going to open in the same manner which we did.
Correct.
And I got a
Right,
feeling,
Les.
huh?
I'll
Okay.
check with RIDE.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Craig. Bill, is your hand up?
Yes, please. For the next school committee meeting, for executive session purposes because of school safety, I'd like to have a report from all the district schools with information about the drill that they've had from the start of school to November 1st, including observers and the types of drills. And I would like to discuss this in executive session because of the sensitivity of the information.
Thanks, Bill. Other, George.
I'd like an opinion as to whether it be based on our policy, legal for or appropriate for school committee members to recognize holidays during our school committee meetings as a matter of recognizing, like Christmas, New Year's, Columbus Day, Thanksgiving.
Are you talking about, how do you mean recognize?
Just to mention it, during our general discussion that Thursday is Thanksgiving, and I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving, that sort of thing. Not actually having a school calendar, but to acknowledge it as a holiday.
Okay, so so I understand this. So just in terms of general conversation with respect to the topic that's been posted, it's relevant to that, and somebody says, well, I'm going to have to think about this over Christmas or something along those lines, and your question is whether or not we're allowed to say those things?
Speech according to Lisa's motion to not recognize those holidays.
Lisa never made a motion like that. I can see the finger wagging now.
On our calendar.
We deleted them off our calendar, Chair.
Correct. Yeah, no. We specifically took holidays off of our school calendar. That is correct. But there is in no way, shape, or form been a discussion about limiting somebody's speech, especially when it's relevant to topics at hand and so forth. If a committee member starts off topic talking about, I don't know, whatever, right? anything, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's off topic, you've got to be pulled back in. It has to be relevant to what's posted on the agenda. It has to be compliant within that space. And your question specifically is whether or not somebody is out of line if they mention Christmas or New Year's or Kwanzaa or Yom Kippur. No.
Under recognition,
There's-
we recognize the holiday.
Do we under recognition is, have we ever recognized a holiday in recognition?
Maybe we haven't, but I want to know whether it would be appropriate to do so.
Okay.
I will simply respond that I don't think a legal opinion is needed here. I think the chair of the school committee has answered the question for you. If you all wish to wish each other a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Columbus Day, Happy Indigenous People, whatever you want to wish to each other, you may do so.
Could we
The chair
recognize
has,
the holiday under recognition?
the chair has answered the question for you.
With respect to the recognition section, that's reserved for individuals within our community that we specifically want to call out. Holidays are not individuals. Anyone else have an agenda item that we want to get into? People are awesome. Thank you. I'm going to end the request for future agenda topics, and this brings us to Mr. Luzon.
First of all, Gina, can I call you?
Yes.
All right. Chair, make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. We have a motion to adjourn by Craig. That's been seconded by Linda Lyle. Those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you all.